Good morning. Can everybody hear me online?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Let's go ahead. First on the agenda. Oh, remarks by me. Let's do let's do the minutes first. We have minutes from November 30th. So those were emailed out. Did everybody get a chance to look at those? And if so, do I have a motion to accept the November 30th minutes? Yeah, you were. November 30th, you were here.
So last week.
No, 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Do I have a motion from Senator Seminara is making a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Representative Smith, great. Any discussion? Or, okay, so all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, great. Now we have the minutes from December 7th, which was last week. Do I have a motion to accept those? Representative Case, do I have a second? Anybody?
This is Gary. I'll second.
Anybody on the phone call want to second the minutes, please?
Second.
Wayne, and any further discussion?
I abstain.
Senator Seminara is, let the record show that Senator Seminara is abstaining. And then all in favor? Okay,
Aye.
great. Any opposed? Okay. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Beverly Brakeman, and I'm the chair of the Wheelchair Service and Repair Task Force. And I'm going to get started on our meeting today. I want to start off with a few remarks. I wanted to let people know we're scheduled till 1:30 today, but I think that we'll probably be able to end by 1, and we will not have our meeting on the 21st. And I will talk about that decision before we adjourn. I'd like to start with a little bit further discussion on the data around staffing. So Jonathan, I'm going to call Jonathan Sigworth. Jonathan, if you could just take a few minutes and summarize the chart that you created based on the data from the industry. I am happy to email this out to people. It's very detailed, so I wasn't going to at this time, but if people want to see it, we can certainly, Chandra can send it out to people now. And then I'd ask Wayne to sort of respond to that. So Jonathan, do you want to start?
Sure. Can I share my screen? It's just a little easier for me to display it.
Chandra, do you have that chart to share the screen? We'll do it here, Jonathan. Can you find it? Okay, just a sec. Chandra will share the screen.
And if that hasn't been emailed out yet, I really would appreciate that being shared.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay,
Jonathan.
great. All right, thanks. So in the top part, these numbers, except for line number 7, are all the numbers that were presented by the industry either on November 16th or orally on November 30th. Just keep at the top of the screen. And I just did some basic numbers, basic calculations, and had some questions for the industry because it wasn't clear to me that the current level of technicians, or I'm assuming that these reflect the averages. When you calculate the average number of in-home and in-shop technicians, and you run that up against the average daily repair rates for in-shop and in-home, and then you look at the average number of monthly repairs being done in-shop and in-home for the last 12 months, it doesn't line up. And so the real question behind this analysis is, understanding what are the other factors in this rather basic calculation that should line up, but doesn't. And the suggestion is that the repair rates, the 4.5 and the 7.5 for in-home and in-shop respectively, are actually much lower. And I'm concerned that that doesn't reflect what's actually happening on the ground. And I think it's important for us as a task force to really get a basic understanding of how the industry is anticipating how, in order to meet some timeline requirement or to figure out the solution to hiring more staff and their target for staff, how are you calculating, how are you getting to the bottom of making that prediction about how many staff we need to do all the repairs. So if we could just scroll down. So based on those numbers, here are some general calculations. So the total text available based on 2 weeks or 2 weeks ago's oral discussion, 11 and 14, NewMotion and NSM respectively. Total average monthly repairs, these were, sorry, not being able to see the whole screen is slightly challenging. So these are some basic calculations based on the numbers above. The real numbers that that matter are line 15 and 16. So this basically shows that in order to do all of the in-shop repairs in a month, NSM and NewMotion would only need one technician. So there's so few in-shop repairs, and the rate of repair is so high, 7.5 per technician per day, to cover that average number of in-shop repairs each month. You would only need 0.4 and 0.2 of a technician working at that level to do all of those repairs, right? So we can't have 0.4 and 0.2 technicians, so you would need at least one. And then to conduct all the monthly repairs in-home, that's, it's a much larger number. It's in the 200s, right? For an in-home technician doing 4.5 repairs on average per day, you would only need 3 for each company. On average, of course, okay? So these are all averages. So this just kind of goes to show that there's, we want to know, and I have my conclusions written down here. If we calculate the expected repairs that could be completed based on the reporting staffing and repair rates, we get much larger numbers than reported as average. If all these variables are averages, what specific calculation are we missing to make the reported data make sense? And you can see line 19 and 20. If we take the reported staffing levels that you're saying and we assume those are averages across the whole year, and we we use the repair rates per technician, 4.5, 7.5, there should be 428 with NewMotion, 855 with NSM. That's how many in-shop repairs you should be able to do if those repair rates are accurate. Same with in-home, it's 684 for both companies if those repair rates are accurate. And then line 21 and 22, this is what I calculated as being the actual repair rates. So if we just look at the staffing levels and we look at the number of average repairs being done in home and in shop, this is the actual rate of repair based on those averages. 1 in shop repair being done per day and 1.5, maybe 2 being done in the home. So it's much less. So that's why I was just wanted to bring this to the attention and wanted to get some clarification from the industry about, how do you I mean, I guess the bottom line is, how are you calculating your rate of repair? And what are we missing from this calculation of averages, which should incorporate, any kind of variances throughout the year, month to month. Averages should level that out. How can we make this calculation better? I'm totally open for criticism and any insight you have based on these basic calculations. And Beverly, I would ask that you share not only the PDF but the spreadsheet, the Excel sheet, because that actually shows the calculations that are described here, so people can play with the numbers and do whatever they want with it.
Okay, are you done, Jonathan?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. Can you remove that? Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, okay. Thanks, Jonathan, for that. Before I turn it over to Wayne and the industry, I want to, first of all, Jonathan, thanks for, taking the time to put that into place and to do those calculations. But I'm going to be honest with everybody that I'm in a place as our chair where I'm ready to move forward and start putting recommendations from this task force into place. I think we've seen the data, we've crunched the data, we've looked at the data, and I think charts and are important, but I also think there really are a lot of variables that I'm not sure that we're in a position to be able to say how this problem gets fixed, but that this problem needs to get fixed. And we have some really good policy recommendations about how that's done. So I think trying to go back and forth with lots of numbers and lots of data that not everybody's going to be able to agree on is not particularly fruitful at getting to the solution to the problem, which is to improve the response time for services and repair. So with that, Wayne, if you want to take a stab at a response, and then I'd like to move on to sort of talking about how we're going to put this report together and what some of my thoughts are about that.
Sure. Thanks, Beverly. Look, Jonathan, thanks for putting that together and the exercise. I think, we've reviewed the chart, and this once again proves how difficult this is to provide a specific answer to how many technicians. This chart has none of the variables that we have laid out that affect our ability to meet the deadlines that the consumers are requesting. I want to remind everybody, both NewMotion and NSM have 14 technicians who do various duties that include repairs both in the home and in the shop. I want to remind everyone that neither NewMotion nor NSM were required or directed to add additional staff, but they did. NewMotion is adding 3 new technicians. That's a total of 17. NSM is adding 2 more. Plus, on top of that, NewMotion is adding 2 customer service people, and NSM is adding 1 customer service people. Both companies have listened to the group and decided on their own to add staff to fix this repair so we can get to repair and service reform. We have always maintained that staffing is one of the many issues that need to be addressed for there to be effective service and repair reform. We've been very forthcoming, and it is time to move forward with putting together our policy recommendations. But I do thank you, Jonathan. You're excellent at Excel. I will tell you that.
Anyway.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions about that? We will share that with people. Jonathan, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I mean, I would just add that I think it is a legitimate question to be able to understand. Again, these are averages, so they do. I'm sorry, I have to disagree. They do take into account if you're reporting something as an average for the year, that should take into account these things. So I don't want to say that this was a fruitless exercise. I think it's very worthwhile to pursue these types of things. But I think what the bottom line is, we can't rely on this data to pinpoint a specific number of staff that the industry may need, because it's difficult to figure that out. It's difficult to analyze the data. It's difficult to verify data. So I think from the consumer advocate point of view, I think figuring out a timeline and letting the industry figure out how to meet that timeline is probably the best course of action. And if anything, I think that's what this chart shows. Thank you.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't mean to imply it wasn't important, but I think what I hear from both Wayne and you and everybody here is this is not an easy number to nail down, and there's no one solution fits all as to how we improve the timeliness of service and repairs. And I think, I think it is important that the industry think about what they're and be able to talk about as we move into the report phase, what their goals are and how they plan to get to a point where they can improve the timeliness of repairs, because the rest of us actually don't know your industry and we can't guess at how to do that. We only know that everybody on this call, on this task force, wants it to be improved. So with that said, we have a couple questions. Sheldon, go ahead.
Thank you. And I think I might be belaboring this, but at the meeting last time, Wayne and I were discussing what the staffing numbers were as reported from New Motion, and he basically said, I can't really answer for Gary. Gary unfortunately wasn't there last week, and Gary invited questions to go through the chair and to Gary, because and this is just my confusion. I'm sorry, but I heard again now just from Gary that there's New Motion has 14 and it's going to be hiring 3 to bring us to 17. But the last numbers presented by you, Gary, was that there were 8 in the field, and I believe only 2 or 3 in the shop, which brings us to 10 or 11. And in addition, you had said you lost 3 people.
I did not say that, Sheldon. I did not say that we lost 3 people.
I thought
What I
you
said,
said,
and my numbers are being twisted slightly. So I have, and I've pulled my numbers right off our ADP payroll report, which gives me people that we are actually paying in the field in Rocky Hill and in the shop in Rocky Hill to do service. And I have 14 bodies that are committed to service, and I'm happy to show a redacted. I can't show names because that would be confidentiality reasons. I couldn't do that. I can show parts of names and things like that, but I can show you an employee number. I can show you that we pay somebody every day. Now, this report is a fluid report, and it's changed a couple times since we started this, but we did lose a tech in Rocky Hill that was dedicated 100% to service. We've since, opened that role in addition to the other 3 roles that we have open. We were down 1. I think my initial report was that we had 1 opening when we started this process. That opening remains open. So I have 5 open roles today that would get us even above that 17. But attrition is going to come into play. I'm not so stupid to believe that I'm going to keep everybody I got today. We have a 30% attrition rate. So we're going to be keeping those 3 additional roles in an evergreen format, meaning we will continue to recruit and hire additional folks as we can, but we're going to try and get to a level of 17 or 18 so that we can bring the backlogs down. But I never said we lost 3 people. I've never said that.
okay, I apologize. I misheard that. So just to clarify then, so it's 14 today, full-time people who are doing wheelchair repairs, both between in-shop and in-home, correct?
And some of those people do other jobs. Okay. There's a subset of that 14 that do nothing but repair. Okay. There are some that do repair. They do delivery of new equipment. They do assembly of new equipment. And so to Jonathan's report, it's not every tech is doing that number of repairs per day. Okay. It's we have to almost look at the aggregate of what we do. We do within a time frame of the number of repairs we complete with that group. But and some of this went back to the initial discussions we had, where there was this discrepancy between our number of technicians and NSMs. Okay. And what I was stating is the people that, wake up every morning, come in and do repairs. Okay. And that was initially 7, and I had one open role there. And then when we said, well, we want to compare apples to apples, why does New Motion have half the number of people? We don't. If you want to compare, belly button to belly button, I've got, several other people in my facility and on the road that are doing additional repairs. And that doesn't even count the people I brought in from other locations to help out, or the moving of a remote tech into the field to try and help us get caught up. So we have more capacity. We have the ability to do this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon. And I'm going to go to David and Joe, and then Senator Seminara has a question, and then I want to move on. I think I do feel that the problem here that we're trying to address has been very well substantiated, and I just don't want to have another meeting where we're going back and forth about this issue of staffing. We know it's an issue, and we know we need to figure out how to address it. But this is not the best use of all of our time, in my opinion, to continue to go back and forth on issues we've already gone back and forth on. So, David, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and this is specific to New Motion. I mean, I was directly told by one of your staff that you had 4 technicians working on the road. So I think there's some, disagreement even amongst your own staff, or the knowledge of your staff of how many people are actually working. It's very confusing when your people are telling us that you have 4 people working doing repairs, and then you're giving different numbers, and then we're changing the definition of the techs and who's considered a tech and what work they're doing. So I just don't understand why I'm being told you have 4 people working when we're being told different numbers by you. The whole thing is very confusing.
Joe, would you share
Okay.
that name and that tech, please, so we can address it? Okay, we'd be more than happy to provide Beverly the names of all of our techs, okay, from both of them, okay?
I'm not.
So she can verify that we have the 14 techs from New Motion, the 14 techs from NSM, okay?
This is David. I said it wasn't Joe. It was David. Me.
Sorry, Joe. David?
No, David. Thank you.
David, I'm sorry. I'm saying, I said Joe, my apology. David, if you would provide the name of that technician and the date you spoke to him, we will address it and find out what's going on. Okay? Again, we'll share the technicians' names with Beverly, okay, from both organizations to prove that once again, we have the 14 from both NSM and both New Motion.
Okay, I don't want the names of your staff, and I don't want your staff being put in the position of being called out for giving information when they may not have the answer to those questions. That is not helpful. That is not a good thing to do to these workers who are out there in the field working, and I don't want that information. So moving on, this is exactly why I'm getting frustrated with this conversation, because it's just not helpful at this point. Having more staff is not the only way we're going to get to a point where we reduce the times, and arguing back and forth about it is just not helpful. And I don't want the names, because I'm not going to assume that the industry isn't giving us correct information when they share it, just as I would say about what the consumers are sharing as well. Rick, do you want to go ahead?
Forget about the numbers. I'm just confused when I'm talking about wheelchair repair and techs. I'm not talking about how many are just doing repairs. It seems that if you do have the 14 or whatever number you said, it sounds like some of those techs are assembling new chairs. Maybe they're working in the mailroom, but they're not totally dedicated to only repairs. So maybe that's where we're getting confused. My other thing is, if you can't solve the problem, what about hiring some kind of consulting firm to examine your operations? Because maybe the backlog isn't with the road people, maybe it's the people in the office who are doing the ordering and the data entry and things like that. Maybe there needs to be some kind of manufacturing audit to see where your weaknesses are, so an outside agency can make recommendations of how you can improve.
Thank you, Rick. I believe that you're referencing the backlog issue, which we did cover at the last meeting. I think, was it you, Diane, that talked about how you're addressing the backlog? Maybe you can just say that again, and then I think Senator Seminara has a question.
Yes, sure. So the backlog is a multitude of couple of things, as we discussed last week. It's part of it's from the supply chain backlog for new equipment, repair pieces, etc. So there's a culmination right now of this past year that kind of created the bigger log than we should have compared to what we've had in the past. What we've done right now internally is relooked at some of our IT systems for where we can, what we call credit accept and move forward, because we know it's a repair that's typically covered. It's going to be covered by the insurance plan. We get it scheduled and moved out. There's also some things that we're putting there for better use of a word, like Gary's doing, and we're doing it in kind in some other areas, bringing in some outside forces of our teams to where we have marketplaces that are a little bit inundated with that backlog that we're having a hard time getting caught up. So there's various things that we do put in place that are looked at. We also have things that we re-looked at, routing schedules and sharing between branch locations, crossovers where we're not just hoping it behold, let's say you're a client in our Niantic or another location, but we have a rep that's going to be coming out towards your area because of another client. We're trying to re-look at how we're optimizing those scheduling and coordination. So there's various efficiencies that we're looking at to redo. And there's some new IT programs that we're doing in the back end that's going to take a little bit longer to load in just because it's IT. But those things are coming in for 2024. So those are some few things that we touched base on last week, Rick, that we discussed. And it should be showing in the minutes too.
Okay, thanks, Senator Seminara.
So you didn't, I just want to get clarity on what you just spoke about. It's not a separate company, because that's what I was made to understand, that there was a separate company that you had hired to address the backlog.
Yeah, we're doing both. We're doing both, Senator. There's a company called WSR that we utilize. I don't know if NSM does.
We do.
But
Very
we're also
limited though.
Yeah, we're also using resources from other locations.
Okay, so your intention is to use resources from other locations and either consult or work with WSR to address the backlog specifically.
WSR is just access to additional techs. They're a company that just does repair, and they're out there, but they can only do very basic ones. They can't do the more complex ones. So that's a limited resource.
Okay, but there are people who are available that you will bring in and perhaps address the backlog specifically.
Yes.
Okay. So really, I don't have any more questions. I think we as a task force have done a very good job at identifying the issues that that have led to where we are today. And the biggest issue for this task force, why this task force was developed, was to address the expediency of wheelchair repair. So at this point, the chairperson has said we are going to start to put together recommendations. And I guess what I'm looking for, still from the industry is some specific recommendations other than to say we're going to hire people. What you might be willing to commit to in terms of how to address this issue. I know you're going to hire people. I know that you're looking at your IT situation and that's going to, but I guess, are you willing to commit at all to timeframes or some specifics that will help direct our recommendations? For example, I think we'll be able to have our backlog resolved by this date. I believe we are looking to get to a point where we can repair wheelchairs in this time frame. You know, that's what the kind of thing I thought might be helpful from the industry. And I'm wondering if you are prepared to talk about that today, or if that's something that you're willing to submit to all of us in the very near future, because I believe our chairwoman is going to start pulling together the data and believe me, I'm a huge data person. So I just want to say I appreciate all the data that has been put forth, and I do look at it. But sometimes the raw data goes, there are other things to be taken into consideration and why that raw data might not all add up to the complete picture. So anyway, that was my question, I guess I'm proposing to the industry at this point. Are you at the point where you might be able to give some specifics as to how you're going to address the issues that the task force has identified over the last several months?
Senator Seminara, this is Wayne. We are in discussions on some things on that. We're not ready to provide anything right now. There's some back and forth between us on what we need to do, and we need to back test a couple things just to make sure anything we do propose will be something we can deliver upon. But we will have something relatively soon to you regarding this issue.
Okay, well, we're not going to be meeting next week. Do you think you might be able to provide us that information before the end of the year via email or electronically?
Yes, ma'am.
That would be really awesome. I appreciate that. And I want you to recognize that I think all of us recognize that there are many things that many things that led to where we are today. And some of them are out of your control. And I do recognize that. We're just trying to get to a point where we can make some recommendations that are going to have legs, so to speak, and that, we can move forward and at least have maybe comfort on all sides. Not everyone will be probably happy, but we may be able to make some progression forward. And I do believe, I do want to stress to the industry, I was fortunate enough to go visit New Motion and see the facility, and I felt like everyone was very receptive to the feedback that I gave during that meeting. And I do genuinely feel that you are all of the mindset that there is absolutely no reason why you would not want to make the consumers happy and improve your service. I do believe that. I do believe you want to improve your service. And I hope the consumers believe that too. My hope is that we can get to some specifics as to how we can do that. And as part, I have spoken to Chairperson Brakeman about one of the recommendations I would like to see going forth is once the task force has made their recommendations. One recommendation that I would like to have is that there's some follow-up to see how whatever we've put forth is progressing, and also how the industry is progressing on their own without our intervention. Do you know what I'm saying? So I hope that we hear from you soon, and that we all have some concrete suggestions from the industry as to how we're going to improve this situation.
Thank you, Senator Seminara. Any other comments? I mean, I have some, I want to talk a little bit about the report. Is there anything else on this, what we've just talked about? Okay. I did write down some of my remarks, so I make sure I say everything. So this is not our last meeting, by the way. I'm going to propose probably at least 2 meetings in January to talk about the report. So I just want to assure everybody this is not our last meeting, although I know everybody's probably quite happy to have next week off. I literally think we might be the task force that set a record for the most number of meetings in the shortest period of time. So we should all feel good about that. So first of all, what I want to say is that we've come a long way from our informal meetings to where we are today. We've come together around a very real issue of the timeliness of complex rehabilitation technology, repair and service facing our state's wheelchair consumers. I do believe we have shown this problem is widespread and consistent across a wide diversity of wheelchair users, and we have discussed potential policy recommendations, some of which we all agree and some of which we do not all agree. I do believe also, as Senator Seminara just said, that everyone on this task force understands we have a problem and is committed to trying to fix this problem and address the real issues facing wheelchair users around their mobility, their independence, and their quality of life that is negatively impacted by having to wait long periods of time for service and repair. And I do believe we're all committed to policy solutions. What those are is where we're going to have some challenges, but we have shared a lot of information and data. We have had substantive discussions, and we've had some disagreements and some frustrations and many challenges. And I believe we all know a lot more than when we started. And I think there's still a lot more to learn, actually. But so thanks to all of your work, the survey and the proposed recommendations, I think I am ready. As my understand it is, I start drafting the report. And having looked at some other reports, I'm a little freaked out by that, I will say. It's a big job, but I also want everybody to know that there should not be one person on this task force who is surprised by what is in that report when we officially give it to the legislature on February 1st. So I want people to know I am committed to a transparent and open process. I also want to remind people of our initial charge that is in the legislation, that the report is required to address these things. And I'm going to say them because I think it's important for all of us to think, to understand what the actual charge is for us to do. And that is to examine and make recommendations for policy, regulations, and legislation necessary to improve the independence of motion and quality of life of consumers using complex rehabilitation technology in the state. I think everybody knows that's one of the things we have to do. We need to assess barriers to timely repair of CRT, including but not limited to recruitment and retention of staff. I think we have covered that one extensively. Travel time to complete repairs, geographical locations of service providers, and supply chain and parts availability issues. I do believe we have covered a lot of that and have a lot of data to report. Review how repairs for complex rehabilitation technology are paid for and by whom. We've also discussed that. And I think that is another issue we're going to have, because there are some areas where the state can legislate, and there are many areas that we cannot. And that's going to be a problem we have to face as a task force when we make recommendations. Survey consumers statewide to determine scope and breadth of policy problems associated with timeliness and cost of CRT repair and other barriers to timely repair. I think we have had a good set of consumers weigh in on this. We have not had the capacity to do a statewide survey, but I think we have enough information to get the scope of the problems that are on the table. And study the successes and challenges experienced by other states that have policies, statutes, or regulations associated with CRT service and repair, and make recommendations concerning adoption of similar policies, statutes, and regulations in the state. And we haven't talked about that a lot, but I am aware of some of the work being done in Massachusetts around this. So what I am proposing is that between now and January 1st, I begin the process of drafting our report. I've been reviewing other task force reports, as I said, and I'm a little daunted by that, but I do look to those to sort of guide this process. During this process, it is my plan to reach out to various members and groups for guidance, input, and feedback. In January, I'm going to propose a couple of meetings to talk about the content. And it is my goal, as I said, that nobody will be surprised by anything in the report. I think most challenging and yet arguably the most important task will be the recommendations for policy, legislation, and regulations, because while I believe we all agree on the goals of timeliness and repair, I don't think we all agree on how best to get there, which is why I think Senator Seminara's request is important. So at this time, my thought is that our report will likely have a section of consensus items and non-consensus items. I want to make sure that the full breadth of what people on this task force have said is brought forward in the committee report. I think that's important. My goal is to make sure that the report articulately lays out the differences and disagreements between groups where they exist. And finally, I guess I would say it is not our job, as I understand it, to engage in discussions on legislative strategy. I mean, we can certainly talk about it as individual groups, but rather to lay out what we believe to be the best policy recommendations for the legislature to decide how best to put into statute or regulation. And that will be the work of all the different groups to talk to legislators as we move forward in that process. But this report, I do not anticipate is going to talk about how we get to what we believe the goals to be. So that being said, I invite feedback, input, thoughts on that process. This is the first time I've ever done this. But with Chandra's help and some other people, I have other task force reports to look at, and certainly we'll be seeking guidance from different people here and in the legislature who've done this work before. So does anybody have any thoughts, questions? Susan, go ahead.
Thanks, Beverly. I just want to say, just at the outset, thank you for what I think you have put together here. I think you've laid out a fair approach. I think you've done an excellent job in chairing this meeting through the course of these discussions. It's obviously very passionate and rightly so. And I just wanted to, say thank you and for all of your volunteer efforts here, and, look forward to the way that you position the report. Obviously, I may be one of those non-consensus people, for policy reasons that reflect the industry's, opinions, but I didn't want to go without saying that I think you've, done an excellent job of pulling together all of the proposals and pulling together the conversation, discussion, and debate. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. And I always appreciate your candor and your honesty. Um, and yeah, that may be the case, but like I said, you won't be surprised by anything that's in the report at the end of the day. Anybody else have any comments about that process? What I'm proposing? No? Seriously? Jonathan, I knew it. I was waiting for you to put your hand up.
Thanks.
I say
I-
that with a lot of, kindness, because I do appreciate, Jonathan, how engaged you have been and how much you have brought forward to this task force. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to say that to you. So I am teasing, but and I'm glad you raised your hand. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Beverly. And again, I'll just echo, I think you've done a remarkable job in this task force, and I know it's been really complicated. Just keeping in mind, the COP28 conference, getting consensus from hundreds of countries is near impossible. I think, we're doing okay in light of the issues we're tackling. I just had a suggestion. I emailed this. Was wondering if it might be helpful if the parties that agree on certain points could help draft the recommendation and justification, and then allowing opposing parties to draft an opposition and any rationale, both of which, you could help edit, could be modified at your discretion. But I was just thinking of that as a suggestion for helping the process move forward, because I know some of these are complex, and I just wanted to make sure that the consumers in the industry, for example, where we agree, we could really make sure that the details are hashed out and make that not burdensome for you.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate that. And I invite anybody and everybody on the task force to provide me with information as I draft the report. As I said, my goal is to put forward the recommendations that we agree, and then some maybe that we don't agree on. I do think it is my job to write the report, but I think there's no reason we can't have addendums and that kind of stuff. So please feel free to give me whatever you have. And I promise if there's something I'm writing that I'm not sure about, you can be certain I will check with the appropriate task force members to make sure that what I am putting forward is accurate. So I think everybody's views, it is my goal that everybody's views will be fairly represented. So, but thank you for that feedback. Anybody else? Oh, okay. So I think we can end here then for today. And I think Chandra and I were looking at the 2 Thursdays in January at a minimum, January 11th and January 18th. And I think this time 11:30 is what we have been doing. I have had some people say they would prefer to do it earlier. I can do earlier on the 18th, but not on the 11th. So does anybody on the committee have strong opinions about that or those dates in particular?
Can you repeat the dates?
Yes, January 11th and January 18th. Okay, you won't.
Beverly, it's Susan. I cannot make the 11th, but I'm happy to catch up afterwards.
Okay, Senator Seminara just said she can't do the 11th either. So, so let me do this because there's no way we're going to land on a date that everybody can do in this large of a task force. I will assume we're going to have probably 2 meetings in January at a minimum, those second and third weeks, and we'll try and survey. I guess it sounds like the 18th works for everybody. So plan on that being a meeting date. And 9 to 11, is that better for people than 11:30 to 1:30? Or do people care?
Yeah, I kind of care.
Okay, so we will definitely meet on the 18th from 9 to 11
Yeah.
AM, okay? And maybe after that, the week after that or the week before that, and I'll let people know, okay? All right, with that, I want to wish everybody who has celebrated the Hanukkah holiday, happy Hanukkah, and for those who celebrate the Christmas holiday and Three Kings Day and other holidays, we wish you all the best. And I think everybody knows how to reach me, so I will be available throughout this time, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. All right, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.